Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our Brewtanix session. Today we have some representatives from Bytes, Nutanix, and of course from the brewery. Before I pass over to those who will be presenting, I'm just going to run over some very quick housekeeping for you all. So the boring bit, just to let you know, you will be muted, but you can ask questions anytime via the chat box. So just pop your questions in and we'll have a short Q&A at the end. This session will be recorded and we will share this session out to you probably tomorrow morning, so you can rewatch that back. And there will be a very short sort of feedback form that will pop up at the end, a little poll, just 2 or 3 questions. And we really do appreciate your feedback on these sort of sessions. So if you could just take, 10 seconds to fill those boxes in, we'd be really grateful. Now, just a quick view of the agenda. I will be passing over to Dan Peeling, who will be presenting just a very short few bullet points on the Bytes and Nutanix partnership. So he works at Bytes. Then we will move across to Nick Helliwell, who will be doing your beer tasting. So he'll kick things off, and then he'll pass over to John Hodson, who will be representing Nutanix, and he'll give you a very brief sort of overview of what you need to know from that perspective. We'll have some time for Q&A, and then we'll pass back over to Nick Helliwell to finish off with the beer tasting, which I'm sure a lot of you, that's the main reason why you're here, right? So without further ado, I'll just pass you over to Dan, and thank you all for joining. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. So hi everyone, and thank you for joining our event today. So my name is Dan Peeling and I head up the infrastructure and the platform team here at Bytes. So we sit under our hybrid infrastructure proposition, where we cover a vast array of different topics, have servicing solutions to help with challenges that you may face today. Within the team, we do have a number of subject matter experts who are here to support both our account teams and support yourselves as customers. Also, we can share some contact details afterwards. I am pleased to be joined by Nutanix. As we said earlier, they are one of our strategic top tier partners, so we're very keen to sort of continue this flow here. We've been working together now for around 8 years, and it is a relationship we see growing from strength to strength. We see a great alignment with sort of our focus on empowering people and organizations, especially with their being market leader in HCI, their continuation to innovate and enable customer choice, and their customer support is top tier as well. We are seeing plenty of shift in the way that we manage to support different environments, applications, workloads today, and being able to adapt and change as quickly and smoothly as possible. And we do see our partnership with Nutanix as one of those partnerships that can really support these sorts of engagements. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover, and just show that we are, keen on these sorts of engagements to continue. And I appreciate that I'm currently between everyone and the beer tasting. So I'll quickly hand over to Nick from Solitaire.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dan. Could we, do we need the slide up, or can we have the grid up so I can see everyone, get feedback? It's always nice to see people's happy faces as they drink beer, or their grimaces otherwise, and get thumbs up and thumbs down otherwise. Lots of people not on camera, which is fine. No one is forced to do so. I'm going to encourage involvement and engagement, and these things are always so much more fun if people do get stuck in, give feedback, good or bad, ask questions, that kind of thing. So if you want to join in, great, please do. I want to first start with thank you for having us here. There's 2,500 breweries in the UK, and we are always very happy to be chosen. A lot of breweries making brown fizzy liquid, and you choose us to come and support these things, and we're very, very happy to be here, and hope we can do a great job for you today. But for the first time, I think we've been doing these things for 2 years with Nutanix, and for the first time, I'm going to have to talk about delivery concerns and issues, because we have been having a bit of a challenge this week. And of the 50-odd people on this call, I think more than 40 of you have got your beer in front of you, but there are about 5 to 10 of you who either haven't got it yet or may even receive it during this call. We use DPD. We pay for their premium service. They are the Rolls Royce. We always send out the beer event minus 4 days on a next day service, and it always works. We had it packed, loaded, labeled, palletized, and ready to go on Monday lunchtime. DPD had initial capacity issues earlier in the week and then weather issues later in the week, meaning that some of you have not got your beer yet, and I do apologize for that. It is coming. You'll just to get to enjoy it in your own time, but you'll have to remember everything I say about the process of enjoying it, although I suspect this probably isn't the first time most of you have drunk beer, so you can enjoy it in your own way. I'm told there is a recording, and we've heard that. So if you wanted to come back and have an in-depth enjoyment, it's full sensory experience of having beer tasting, you will be able to drink those beers and have them with a recording. Or I'm happy for people to contact me directly with questions or comments or thoughts. I'm nick@saltairebrewery.com. I'll put that in the chat later. If anyone ever wants to get in touch with me, then I'm more than happy to chat beer. It's what I love doing. So feel free to do that. While I'm gassing away for the next 5 minutes about a few bits and pieces, the first beer we are going to be drinking is this one, the Saltaire Blonde, the yellow label. So if you are raring and ready at 4:10 to have a beer and you want to start going, this is the beer to start with, the Saltaire Blonde. So you can open that one. That's the one, Matt. Thank you very much for holding it up. So yeah, have a go at that one. I will be coming back in a couple of minutes to do kind of a joint. We'll taste it together, see what people think, and talk about how it's made, what goes in it, what in theory it tastes like, and what we think of it. As I say, I've done tens, if not hundreds of these over the past 2 years, initially as part of lockdown, because this is all we could do socially, but it's kind of, in a corporate sense, it's carried on, and we always love doing them. But I know that the best ones are when people get involved, when people ask questions and make comments and give feedback. So please do that. We'll all have a lot more fun in these beer bits. If that goes on, we can have a laugh about it, or otherwise, or say how much we enjoy it. So there's various ways to do it. I mean, how many are? We're 31. 31's pretty cozy. I'm happy for anyone coming off mute and just shouting out their question, putting me up, asking me what's going on, what does that mean, or throwing in a comment or two. Let's make it like we're sat around in a pub, and if there's something that you're thinking that I've been a bit too technical about and you want a bit more in depth, or you've got a question, just shout it out, because someone's probably thinking the same as you. If you don't feel like shouting out, and feel free to throw it in the chat. I've got the chat open on my right hand side, and I can see your comments as they come up, so I'll be picking up questions and comments as we go through it. I can see Philip Camp said he would love to get stuck in with a beer. I think that's what he means. He has to remember to get the kids at 5:15. So when I talk about this bit now, I understand, Philip, you know, I'm working. You're all having fun. You're invited here as guests. I'm working, so I'll be drinking very little. I'll be drinking the odd little sip here and there, and you're encouraged to either down both bottles of every beer as you wish between now and 5:30, or just have a sip, taste the beer, enjoy it, maybe put your favourite one by for a drink later on with dinner. And John Hodson says, better quick, drink quick, Philip. Yeah, okay, we'll see if we can get all 5 beers down you by 5:15, Philip.
I'd love to, but I'd wobble very much on the bike for the 4 miles to get the kid.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, they'll be waiting for you later on. Take some notes and see if you agree with me or the others as we taste it. And Sam says he was thirsty, so he opened a Velocity while waiting for the meeting to start. We'll be talking Velocity this afternoon at some point, so you can give us your feedback when we get onto that, Sam. So yeah, as I say, the chat's open there, and I'll be referring to it. So
it's a lovely, refreshing beer, lots of flavour. But quick question for me, what are these bags about?
Well, I've never seen those bags in my life before, Jeff. I don't know, where did you buy those from?
Well, they came in the box.
Stopped. I was wrong shipment, yeah. I wouldn't get stopped with those if I were you, Jeff. Okay, so we'll come back to those. Those are some of the ingredients that that go into making beer, and in fact, one of them is a member of the marijuana family. You can work out which one yourself, and that's the one probably not to get stopped with and having embarrassing conversations with somebody. I mean, it wouldn't smoke it; it has none of those kind of effects, but it could be mistaken that way for sure. When we go through talking about how we make beer and drink some of the other beers, we'll taste and smell some of those ingredients and see if we can appreciate how they go into the process, Jeff. So hopefully that will all become clear over the next kind of hour or so. Who are we? Who am I? We're Saltaire Brewery. We're based in West Yorkshire. I don't know if many of you are local to us. We're about 15 minutes on the train west of Leeds. We're very close to the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Saltaire. It's a model village that was created by a wool magnate named Sir Titus Salt, and he built this wool empire, this textile empire on the River Aire, and therefore he very humbly named the village that he built for his workers as Saltaire, and it remains to this day. So it was a model village where he created the housing and the shops and the leisure areas, the gardens, the worship areas, the shopping, all that kind of thing, all around his factory, which at the time was the biggest textile factory in the world. Of course, that is the biggest factory of any kind in the world at the time, but time has moved on since then. But because of its history and what it involved and what was so as a landmark about the area, it is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's really worth a visit. The mill's been converted into art galleries and restaurants and cafes, and if you haven't been before and you're not too far away, come and see it, because it's a lovely place to go. Phil and I are in Oxford, where the snow is. I used to live in very South Oxfordshire, Pangbourne, and it's not far from, there's an RAF base, Benson, near there, where it was always like the coldest place in England when it got cold. I remember really thick snow, blue sky and sunshine in Wigan. Good stuff, John. So you can sit outside and do this. That will be fun to do. So the brewery founded in 2005. I mentioned that the 2,500 breweries in the UK today. Well, when we started, back in 2005, there were about 400 breweries. So since that time, 16 years, 2006 was our first brew. So 16 years ago, the number of breweries in the UK has gone from 400 to 2,600. And that explosion is known as the craft beer revolution. And even though we're only 16 years old, we're older than 80% of all the breweries in the country. And a lot of our beer is quite traditional in nature. And that's those kind of 500 ml bottles that you've always seen on the supermarket shelves, but because that's what was around when we started brewing. But as time has gone by and beer has developed and it's moved into things like cans, wow, that will blow some people's minds, I'm sure, to have premium beer in a can and it's all colourful and looks like pop and tastes all fruity and juicy. That's what's come out of the craft beer revolution, and we've got some of that, and we'll share that later on too, and we'll talk about what's the differences and why and which we prefer. So we've got a kind of foot in both camps, that traditional pre-2005 ale world, and then the kind of since then what's known as craft beer, you know, big beards and top knots and that kind of thing, that is synonymous with, but not absolutely stereotypically those kinds of characters, and it is as Brewdog say, beer for everyone, beer for all. That's what it's all about. Surprised to see, David, surprised to see a crate full of bottles, garages full of cans. That's right. But do you know, David, there will be a real divide, and there always is when we do these things, that there's going to be some people that think the bottled beers are boring, and there's going to be some people that think that the canned beers are wrong. And that's just how it works. And that's one of the beauties of beer and food and just enjoyment of this kind of thing, is that we all have our own opinions and preferences. And to be honest, that's all that matters. Because next we're going to get on to tasting. And actually what really matters when we get to tasting is what you think. Because people can get too caught up in what it's supposed to be or how I'm supposed to drink it. It's a beer. You drink it how you like it, and you feel like how you feel about it, and that's all that matters. And you've got 5 different beers in that box, and each one will have an equal number of favorites on this call with these people. So when we say who thinks I'll say, well, I think this is what this beer tastes like, and the theory says this because it's got these ingredients in. Actually, you might think it's something completely different and like it or not. And that's all that really matters. We're all world experts in our own palates, as they say, and that's the main thing. A bit more about the brewery. We make about 6 million pints a year. That's about, we count in hectolitres, 30,000 hectolitres, so it's about 3 million litres every year. That amazingly still makes us a micro brewery in the eyes of the government, and we're brewing 16, 17, 18 times a week with a team of 50 people, and that classes us really as a regional size brewer. We're still a micro brewery in the eyes of the government because we're not Carlsberg or Carling or Stella or all these kind of huge multinational breweries. And you'll find us in all the UK supermarkets. You may not have noticed us there before, but certainly this one, Saltaire Blonde, is national in Tesco and Morrison's and Co-op and quite a few others. So in your local supermarket, depending on what size it is, you'll find us in there. You find us in 20 different countries worldwide, a lot in Scandinavia, a lot in the Far East, but around in New Zealand. Our chocolate beer is pretty good in New Zealand and Australia, and South America, Falkland Islands and the Caribbean. So it has got its way around the world. And if you haven't heard of or drunk any Saltaire beer before, you've almost certainly had it in something you've eaten, because we're a big supplier into branded and own brand supermarket food production. So if you've ever eaten a product from Morrison's that contains beer, and we're talking pies, they've used it to flavour their sausages and their burgers, stuffings, sauces, all that kind of thing. If you've ever had anything like that from Morrison's, their house beer for production is Saltaire Blonde. So you'll have had it in there. We also supply into Vale of Mowbray pies for their flavourings. If you've ever had a taste for different bread from Sainsbury's, they use our beer to flavour their breads. And also we supply an Irish company who does own brand stuff for Marks and Spencer. So you've probably had our beer in some sense, one way or another, I would guess, over the years. But anyway, maybe this is the first time you hear about us specifically and taste the beer. So let's see. A few comments. Wish my garage was full of beer. Sam, you're probably drinking it too quick. Loving the international success. Congrats. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we use we started out ourselves doing it, and I used to, and you know, it's easy to make it sound glamorous. I'd go to country after country, 3 or 4 or 5 days at a time, meeting buyers, drinking beer, enjoying international capital cities. It was great, but it takes you away from your family, and you find yourself on an aeroplane all the time, and it gets old pretty quick. So we got an international brand manager company to take us on, and they've got access to 71 countries and just started plugging us in, and we're up to 20 now, and that's going really well. Good, excellent, Sam. Thank you. You've done the velocity and then the blonde, so you go a little bit back to front, but that's fine. You have to have the velocity again, Sam. So I hope you enjoyed it. Good. Okay. So what we're going to drink? We're going to drink blonde, and this is our flagship beer. Okay. So those 5-6 million pints, 2/3 of it is Saltaire Blonde. So it's what kind of pays our wages, and it is what keeps the lights on. And for that reason, we're massively proud of it. It is not our most interesting beer. It is not our most exciting beer. It is not our strongest beer. But it's a good place to start, because for a couple of good reasons, it kind of defines us as a brewery and how we've got to where we are today. And it's a good place to start in terms of tasting, and we'll get into some of the other examples as we move on. So we'll start with Saltaire Blonde, and how are we going to taste? Well, you've all drunk beer before, so I'm not going to teach you how to drink beer, but I'll talk about how we would assess it from a kind of professional perspective, and we'd use all our senses, some of them more interesting than others. For instance, the first one we're going to start with is our hearing, and no one really looks forward that much to what a beer sounds like when you open it, but it is part of it. So that hiss that you get tells you, oh, I've got a carbonated product here, because there's carbon dioxide in there. So you get in that kind of, already there's a bit of comfort. Okay, is it overly spilling out, spraying out everywhere? No, it isn't, but it's got a hiss. So that's good news. It's likely to be in a region of decent carbonation, but also if your ear's very attuned to it and you know what kind of beer you're drinking, you would tend to say that those lighter, paler beers like lager, like a pale beer like this, would have a higher carbonation level the texture and fizz and refreshingness versus those really either high alcohol or very dark beers like Guinness, like your chocolate beers. Those kinds of things are generally a softer carbonation because it's just a softer, smoother experience. So there is a kind of scale in carbonation that we purposefully put into a beer, and you might be able to pick that up through the opening of that beer. Anyway, it's open, and the next thing we're going to do is work down the face. So we're going to go eyes, nose, mouth. That's always how to remember that. So let's have a look at eyes, and let's have a look at that beer. And I can't see yours, but if it looks anything like mine, which I certainly hope it does, making however many million pints of this we do each year, hopefully it's pretty consistent, and you've got something that looks very stereotypically beer-like. It's amber pale in colour. You can see the carbonation fizzy in there. It's got a nice white head on it. Do you know, if you weren't to know that it was an ale, because it says ale on the front there, then you would be forgiven for thinking this is a lager, and that's not an absolute accident, because when we went about trying to create our core beer, our main beer, we wanted something that would appeal to as many people as possible. And in some ways, what you want to say is you want it to offend as fewer people as possible, be as approachable to as many as possible. And if we look at beer consumption in the UK, 70 to 75% of every beer drunk in the UK is a lager. That is really our beer of choice in the UK. And if you go into Europe, and especially into Eastern Europe, that can go as high as 99% of all beer is lager. So we wanted to create an ale that was as lager-like as possible. And that's what we went about with Blonde. So we used continental malts and continental hops to create this product that is an ale, but is as close to a lager as it could possibly be. And in that sense, we set out and have tried to achieve what we call a gateway drug that you could give to a lager drinker that would drink it and enjoy it, but then understand, okay, ale is okay, actually, I can drink ale, maybe I can drink more by this Saltaire brewery, or open my mind that ale can be approachable and enjoyable. So it's quite lager-like, and that's not by accident. And so if you are a lager-only drinker, you might have a drink of this and go, oh, that's okay, actually. So it starts out thinking, well, we look at it and it looks like that. Now the smell's a bit different. The smell is not quite so lagerish. It's a little bit stronger in smell, not massively so. We're going to have much more aromatic beers as we go on. But what I get off the nose are a couple of things. One, in fact, the overall thing I get is a kind of breadiness, a bready earthiness, and that breadiness that's coming from the smell for me, primarily, well, I know it's there and it's something I look out for, because that's the yeast. There are 4 ingredients that go into making beer. There's the water, then there's the malt, and there's the hops, and we'll talk about how they work later on. But then you've got the yeast, and the yeast performs a really important job. That's going to take the sugars from the malt and turn it into alcohol, make it a beer, make it an alcoholic product. And at Saltaire Brewery, we use our own yeast. It's a yeast that we've been cultivating since day one. Has anyone made sourdough? There's a few people with a video, and people nodding away, and potentially other people that I can't see. But when you make sourdough at home, you have a starter, and that starter is a kind of a pale yellow, whitish, bubbly, living thing. And our beer yeast looks very similar to that, but we've got it in much greater volume. It's got its own house, refrigerated, locked, because it's super important to us. We take that yeast and we throw it into our beer to turn the sugar into alcohol. When it's finished, we collect it back up and we put it back into storage. Every time we've used it 4 times, we acid wash it and keep it clean and look after it. And that yeast we've been using since day one in 2005, 2006. So we've used it 4,500 times on our beer. And in that time, it has just gets the essence of our environment, our area, our flavor. And you can't make Saltaire Blonde using any other yeast, because it just doesn't live. It's a living, breathing thing that belongs to us. We've tried to make it with different yeasts. Just doesn't have the same character. And much of the character of Saltaire Blonde, with a really simple malt bill, And a really simple hop bill means you're getting that character of yeast. And people say, oh, I can taste like that it's a Saltaire beer when I have different beers. And all our 500ml products like this use that yeast. And therefore, there is that continuation of flavour. And hopefully it's a continuation of flavour that you enjoy, because it's kind of a trademark characteristic for us. Let's move on to the tasting. I've not tasted anything yet. Hopefully you've had a little taste already. So it's very simple, very approachable. There's not a vast amount of flavour going on, which in many ways isn't a bad thing, because what we're trying to do is appeal to people with beer. As someone can sit down and have maybe 3 or 4 of them, more, I believe some people would drink, but be able to continue to do that, because these days beers can be big and strong and powerful and flavoursome, and you have one and go, well, do you know what, that's enough. But actually what we're trying to be here is delicate and balanced and easy to drink. So the hop we use is called Saaz, S-A-A-Z, and that's a hop from Old Bohemia, which is now around Czech Republic area, and that is a lager hop, and it is restrained, it is earthy, and it is spicy. So maybe you can get a bit of pepperiness, maybe you can get a bit of earthiness on that palate. Certainly no sweetness. This is a savoury product, and you're getting that those savoury flavours. The one way it does differentiate itself from lager is in bitterness. So we measure bitterness in IBUs, international bittering units. And if we think about, let's say, one that I absolutely know of, and okay, it's not everyone's most popular lager these days, but Budweiser is an IBU of 9 international bittering units, and Saltaire Blonde is about 20. So if you are a lager drinker and you drink that and go, oh, well, actually, I don't like that bitterness on there, it's not quite a lager for me, that's probably the difference there. It is still an ale. We do like our beer to be bitter and have that satisfying bitterness of an ale. So it is a characteristic of our beer. And there are some people who are going to say, well, this is boring, I don't like it. And I understand that, but maybe after you've had a nice walk and you walk into a pub and this is on the bar, it's the kind of thing that will just hit the spot, especially sat in the sunshine, and you can enjoy it. But as I say, we're going to have more interesting beers from us as we go on, but this is a good one that sets the scene. It talks about our yeast, it talks about what's made us successful and what's hit the spot, and it just talks through a little bit about ale. Lager. Now we have a real lager, an actual lager later on in the tasting, and at that point I will talk about the difference between what is a lager and what is an ale. Now, and to just address a few questions, and then I'm going to hand on to John. So let's just have a look at these. Jeff, just come back from skiing in France, was amazed by how strong the beers are compared to UK beers. You know what? I don't disagree with you, Jeff, at all. And you'd find even more of that happening if you went to the USA. I lived for 3 or 4 years in Texas, and I was just blown away by not being able to find a beer under 6% in the pub. I mean, and I now go over there for business purposes, and I talk to the buyers, and the sweet spot for buying beer in the US is 8%. Now, that's just crazy compared to when I talk about something like a beer I know, Breakspear. Breakspear's bitter, which is made in Henley, not far from Oxford. I don't think it's made there anymore, but certainly that's where it's from. That's 3.6%. And the Americans just can't believe that that's even a beer taken seriously. But certainly what we are about in the UK is about sessionable beers, about being able to drink a number over time and enjoy them rather than just have a couple and disappear. So it's probably a culture thing, Jeff. And it suits you or it doesn't. Define lager. We'll come back to that if that's okay, Jeff, when we've got a lager in front of us. Philip says, first for me for Saltaire outside of the food, so we'll enjoy. People are tasting now. How does it compare to Kentish styles? What you got in Kent? You got Adnams, right? Philip, is that a favourite of yours?
Well, I mean, I lived in Kent for 15 years, so I've done the whole, what do you call them, Shep and Neem.
Oh, yes.
You probably not. My favourite down there is another microbrewery. Well, I won't mention because it's cruel. But you know,
who is it? Go on.
Hop Demon. If you've ever.
Demon. Don't know those. I know the guys at Ramsgate. You know Ramsgate, Philip?
Yeah, Ramsgate Brewery, I know. But
Gans,
are a very small scale.
Yeah.
So, and they don't tend to sell outside of Kent, so it is sometimes hard to get hold of.
Hop Demon sounds like a pretty forward-thinking brewery. You don't think they're making Twiggy Brown Ale, are they, Philip?
They do one called Leviathan, which is a sort of brown ale, which is awesome. So if you get your hands on that, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I'll look out for that. It's always great to find new places. But yeah, no, thank you very much. Good. Matt says a session ale, very nice, right up my street. Great to hear. John, getting closer to wine, you know, it is, and you know, it doesn't stop at 8%. There's barley wine, well, it's called barley wines, but I mean, you can regularly now get cans of craft beer that are kind of 10+%, 10, 11, 12%. I think the idea is drink those in small quantities like wine. That's the point. If you go, and actually, when you look at their prices, they can be 10, 11, 12 pounds a can. So you're investing in this thing, and you're probably going to want to drink it at about the same pace as wine if you're spending that much on it. Sharing the tasting notes when the beers arrive, always share the recording. I believe the recording is being shared, so someone official can confirm that, but I believe that's going to happen. If you want some personal notes on the beer, just drop me an email, nick@saltairbrewery.com. Just let me put that in there. You can or get in touch with me whenever you like. Best beers, Imperial Stouts. I love an Imperial Stout from, I don't know, can anyone help me pronounce that? I'd ruin it. Mathieu Galant. I hope that's right. Mathieu Galant. I love Imperial. We do an Imperial triple choc, which is 7.4%. So that's a big favourite of mine for a Saturday night after dinner. G-May, for example, Trappist Monks, yeah, good stuff. I agree, Jeff. And stronger beers, David. You know, stronger beers. It's kind of trading up. That's what the world is doing. Premiumizing with alcohol. Really, that kind of those kind of volume cheap beers are moving on now into these premium, stronger. People are drinking more of less at higher prices. It's only getting higher. I promise you that. All inputs are going up. So I think that's going to happen more and more. Okay, so that's it for me now. I think the next one we're going to drink is the Velocity. So Sam, you're straight back onto Velocity, or you can just remember how it was to taste. No one has been mean about beer yet. I suspect there's some people on here not enjoying it that much. I really don't mind you telling me exactly what you think of it, good or bad. Give it both barrels. I've had someone tell me that our beer tastes like it was scooped out of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, and I'm happy to take that on board. So don't hold back. If you're not enjoying it, just tell me. It's great, and we can have that chat. Are all our ingredients from the UK? No, they're not, because we're trying to create a diverse range of beers, and therefore we've got American pales and we've got continental lagers, and for that we're trying to be as authentic as possible. So the next beer is going to have some US and Antipodean hops in there, and then the lager's got loads of continental stuff in. We do have all British beers. You have one in your box. The best is all British ingredients, so if that's important, that beer is available. Great. John, over to you.
I was just typing then. I was just about to say that I think the Leeds-Liverpool Canal is actually alcoholic anyway.
Probably. I wouldn't recommend drinking it though, John.
No, not at all. I was actually going to ask, have you guys thinking about venturing into like sort of the mini kegs? I've just been bought one of those draft pump machines.
Yeah. So a perfect draft system.
Yeah.
Is it that one? Yeah. So those systems are pretty niche and are owned by a couple of really big brands. There's one of them that is through Beerhawk. Is that the one you've got, John? That's the really popular one.
All I know is it's six. I can't remember. I'd have to have a look, but yeah, I've only just got it recently as a present. So it's like 6-litre kegs.
Yeah,
like metal kegs.
They're becoming more and more popular. For those that don't know, it's like a miniature dispense system that's kind of the size of a food mixer. It sits on your top in your kitchen, plugs in. It's got a cooler in there. It's got some CO2 in there. You can literally pour a pub-style pint at home. Loads of fun for parties, or if you just want a good beer while watching the sport or whatever. They're becoming more and more popular. They're owned by the really big brands, John. So the one that the Beerhawk do, which is the most popular in the UK, is owned by AB InBev, which is Anheuser-Busch, which is the original Budweiser, and there's a Brazilian brew. They've all come together, and it's just a massive international conglomeration. They then bought Beerhawk, and now they're pushing this. But they own the filling of these kegs, so they fill what they want into those kegs. Now, we've got a great relationship with Beerhawk. We do loads with them, and what they want to use that system for is to bring more customers to them. Now, they see something like Saltaire Blonde as an opportunity because they can't pull cask customers into Perfect Draft. But if they can offer a Saltaire Blonde bottle carbonated equivalent into that, they hope to bring the national blonde buyer into that system. So we're talking about later on this year releasing a blonde version into that, but you can't just decide to do it unless you create your own bespoke system, which is way out of somebody like ours pocket, but that's the reasoning.
Right, understood.
Yeah.
Right.
Over to you for business.
Yes, so I'm going to keep this slide light. This is just aimed at a quick general overview to Nutanix and an introduction, and we'll have some questions. We want to open it to a bit of a Q&A at the end, and we've got a couple of questions as well in the actual. So we're asking for a bit of audience participation. So feel free, if you don't want to talk, just put it in the chat. But yeah, feel free to jump in at any point. So let me just share my screen. Is everyone seeing the lady? Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. Right. So I've got my myself, and with me I've got Jeff McGowan on the call. He's my technical genius who keeps me honest. So he may chip in, and also if we've got any questions, I'm 99% sure that Jeff will answer them, not myself. But in terms of Nutanix, Nutanix was created by the people who actually created the Google file system, so actually born out of the cloud. And what we're doing is we're a software solution that sits on commoditized x86 servers, and we're putting your compute, storage, and networking and virtualization into one invisible stack. Now, compared to 3-tier, we're going to offer an easier, faster, more robust and scalable solution with a lower total cost of ownership. So from an infrastructure point of view, hyperconversion is going to allow you to deploy infrastructure in less than an hour. We've got 100%, the scaling is 100% linear. So if you want to double your capacity, you can add just double the amount of nodes. We're a 100% software solution, so we can run on, as I said, those commoditized servers, and the entire stack can be really simply upgraded with like one-click operations. So any upgrades, disaster recovery side of things, that can be done with just a click. And all the whole product stack is core value is around simplicity. So once you've moved to Nutanix and modernized your infrastructure, you've created effectively your own private cloud. Now, most people on this call at some point will have done a cost exercise of looking at existing on-premise hardware versus putting everything in the cloud. I'm pretty sure everyone's done that. And typically, when people have done that, it's come out that either it's too expensive, too time-consuming, or that it's not a quick process. You know, a lot of I think majority of people on this call today are public sector, and we're in the public sector, you have to deal with a lot of legacy applications, a lot of legacy systems that are just not ready for that, just not ready for the cloud, or just can't exist there. So there's a need, and with Nutanix, what we're offering is this best of both worlds approach. It's really difficult in the current climate to understand what your infrastructure is going to look like in the next 12 months. Never mind that if you come into a refresh and you're looking at refreshing kit for the next 5 years. So Nutanix is in that position and that ability. We've got customers doing now where they're replacing kit with leased kit, for like kit that's been leased for a couple of years, with the ability to either at the end of that have an option to buy, or they've already in that process and they've already moved to the public cloud, so they can decommission the on-premise hardware, give the kit back, and then they've migrated across. What with Nutanix is about is that choice. We offer all the major hardware vendors that you can see at the bottom of the screen, all the major public clouds, and it's about putting your resource where appropriate. Sometimes you need that resource on premise. I was talking to a university the other day, and they were saying that the amount, because they're a research university, the amount of data that goes across the network, it just can't exist in cloud, and it never will. Not for until they can get the level of throughput from externally to manage that amount of data. I think we were talking close to petabytes of data there that are going across the network. So, why do people choose Nutanix? Simplicity is probably up there for me. The amount of customers I've spoke to since my time at Nutanix, and I'm fairly new to Nutanix. I'm a few years in, but I've got a history around Citrix and end user computing. So I've known Nutanix for many years. But from the customers I've spoken to in the last couple of months, everyone has said that it's really easy to use. The one-click operations, the updates. I think it was the University of York who got their Tuesdays back, because every Tuesday night they used to do updates to the system, and they love Nutanix because Nutanix has given them their Tuesday evenings back. And that's very important, because Tuesday evenings are good because you can drink salt air and go on a Brewtanix and taste beer instead of updating. On top of that, we offer choice, and this is reaffirming what I was speaking about before. We can work on any hypervisor, and in terms of hypervisor, I'm going to ask in a minute about that. Is, in fact, if you want to put it in the chat. So with Nutanix, you can run on any hypervisor. The main ones are VMware, Hyper-V, and Nutanix's own operating system. Now, we've just got to the point where we tipped over about, I think it's 6 to 12 months ago, where we've got more customers running on Nutanix than any other hypervisor at the moment. But it doesn't have to be that you have to run Nutanix. We run on VMware, we run on Hyper-V. We've got some customer. Is there anyone on Hyper-V on the call? I know we've got customers, but that are running Hyper-V, but it'd be interesting if anyone wants to speak up. But if you want to put in the chat whether you're running one Nutanix with a mixture, 4 is the mixture of Nutanix and VMware. Right, so Phil's got some Hyper-V, David's running VMware, Tim, AHV. So we've really got a genuine mix. And that's what's great about Nutanix, is that we can do that. We can run on any hypervisor. On top of that, as we said, we can run on the multiple clouds. But with it being a software organization, a software company, and we put a lot of focus on data centricity. So that's about that we can deploy in hours and we can manage structured and unstructured data, analytics, mobility, and the fact that you're taking from a number of solutions into one converged infrastructure, it actually makes it more secure. And we've got a raft of security features that we can go into greater detail on another call, and I'd encourage you to reach out to your Bytes account managers. You can reach out to us directly to set up a demonstration where we can go into more detail about that. But yeah, we've go into Nutanix is actually a lot more secure. Now, customer experience. Now, this is a big one. When I joined Nutanix 2 months ago now, this was hammered home on my induction, and I know there's quite a lot of people with a lot of experience in the industry, and there's a lot of marketing bump that you hear over the years. And when I was on my induction and it said about our customer experience and our support and the simplicity, I at first, my initial reaction, I was I was treating it with a pinch of salt, but having talked to customers, and I've in the few months that I've been here, everyone's talked about how good the support is, and I'll put the next question, which is just I'm just intrigued as to what people and this is just generally speaking. I don't want you to feel that this needs to be in reference to Nutanix, but just in general, what's the most common vendor IT support irritation? By this, what do you not want to hear? Because where Nutanix puts a lot of focus is ensuring that we give the best support we can. The technology is really simple. Rarely something does go wrong, but if something does go wrong, we want you to have the best experience, and that reflects in our NPS scores. So Jeff, slow response is what annoys me the most. Yeah, it's such a frustration. One that I hate personally is when you hear someone who's going through first and second line answering. I was just about this. What David? This is preaching to the converted, because that was going to be my one. Is that when someone raises a support ticket and the first line person just goes through that list of questions and go, "Are you on the latest version?" No. Right, we'll upgrade to the latest version and log the call again. I'm closing the case, which I've seen over the years being in the industry. A big bugbearer. But with Nutanix, I think the first person you're going to speak to is a third line. Third line support rep. And that's why our NPS, one of the reasons our NPS scores are so high. You might not put a lot of weighting into NPS scores, not net promoter scores or Gartner peer insights, but we've got customers on the call. They'll tell you about our support experience. I had a customer the other day who said, Nutanix taught me how support should be. Also, we offer free training, and we have referenceability. We've got 20,000 customers. So, yeah. In terms of customers, because we got 20,000 of them, in terms of education and central government, we've got good coverage there. There's another Brewtanix, I think, in Newcastle on the end of April. It's in person. That's got, I think, DWP presented at that Brewtanix as well. So I'd encourage you, if you can make that and you're in the area, to come along. But we've got plenty of references in higher education. A couple that I wanted to speak about: University of Reading. These came to us with the challenge that they'd done the cost comparison of existing on-premise to public cloud, and they came to us with the challenge of we want to take all the benefits of public cloud, but we'd like it to be cheaper, faster, and more secure. So no pressure. And that's why they chose Nutanix as a platform. We gave them like a 16-to-1 data reduction. They run purely on a majority on the Nutanix hypervisor. So we've managed to strip a lot of the VMware licensing, and that made some significant cost savings for those guys. Another good example is Coleg Gwent. Coleg Gwent. Their timing of their investment into Nutanix was pretty special, because they bought Citrix and Nutanix together just before COVID. So they'd rolled out a new VDI platform or a new virtual desktop platform, and then COVID hit, and then suddenly they needed to double the capacity. And one of the reasons they bought into Citrix and bought into Nutanix was that ability to scale at pace. So they bought perfectly at the right time and implemented that solution at the right time, and they were covered for that quick ability to be able to scale. I will let Jeff answer that question that's Philip's raised. So while I continue talking, I'll let you handle that, Jeff. In terms of NHS, we've got really good coverage in the NHS. Some particular references that I wanted to talk about were the Princess Alexandra hospitals. They came to us. They were doing a refresh of their existing 3-tier infrastructure. They were looking to reduce the management overheads, simplify costs, and reduce downtime. And one of the factors for them was also the ability to migrate to the cloud. It was a big factor, because they, as I said, with today's position with COVID and uncertainty, they knew that they were going to probably make some journey to the cloud, some resources were going to be there, so they needed a platform that allowed them to make that journey. Sussex was the same. Sussex, again, very similar. They had a 3-tier refresh. It was about reducing costs, simplifying management, reducing downtime, and having a more flexible platform. For them, I think we reduced their VMs by 40%. So we made some real kind of capacity savings there. And then local government, again, a lot of coverage. We've got some really good case studies in local government. Manchester City Council stand out to me in terms of they're running 900 plus VMs. They made a saving of 285k savings per year. So made a significant savings for themselves. And Derby City Council, this is a very kind of quite a famous case study for Nutanix. Derby made a choice probably 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was, Jeff, if I'm correct, to move everything into the cloud. So they did a lift and shift. Now, there'll probably be a lot of people with looking at that quite dubiously on the call, not many people on camera, but there'll be a few people going, they lifted and shifted everything into the cloud. We ended up, it was costing them, the costs were spiraling, and they came to us to bring things back. And since then, they've actually re-implemented some services back into the public cloud. And they're looking at what's relevant, what's applicable to put there. But we saved them, I think, 1.7 million. I think it was over 5 years. So huge savings. Now, if you need any more information, as I've said, reach out to your Bytes account manager. You can email tellmemore@bytes.com. I think it's .com, isn't it, Dan? Not .co.uk. Is it .co.uk?
Okay.
Apologies. Oh, made a schoolboy error there. So tell me more at bytes.co.uk. And we've also, if you want to have a trial of the software, we've got the link there. At that point, I will pause for questions or beer, whichever you want. So, well, first of all, Jeff, do you want to speak to Philip's? Is it Philip? Oh, no, not Philip. Speak to Philip's question, yeah.
Yeah, no. So hi there, Philip. Yes, thank you very much for that question. I just sent a reply there. Is there any area specifically in the NSXT advanced stack that you're looking at feature-wise? Because we do have a product called Nutanix Flow, as well as Security Central, as well as something called Nutanix Flow Networking, which is quite a recent addition into our software-defined networking stack.
Without giving too much away in a semi-public forum, but I guess it's because the current trajectory would be towards NSXT and some of the features that it is offering, particularly because we probably have moving towards a diverse set of clouds within a sort of incumbent ACI fabric also on premise, but we're already using NSX standard because we have a vCloud install as well.
Yeah, definitely, and we identified that as a major requirement for any type of hybrid cloud type scenario is obviously having the ability to have seamless networking virtually and physically. So we've recently updated our Nutanix Flow. So Nutanix Flow as a product was originally just around microsegmentation and security. We've since updated that with routing, the ability to do routing, the ability to do to actually create tunnels, TLS tunnels, and create networking directly into a hybrid cloud type scenario. So definitely there are certain features that are in NSX that we do have in Nutanix Flow. The one caveat I would say is that perhaps in the Enterprise Plus and the Advanced, there are stuff like stateful firewalls. There's a lot in NSX.
There is, there's a huge amount.
A huge amount. So I don't think we're quite at feature parity with the most advanced versions of it, but our Nutanix Flow does have all of the standard required hybrid cloud networking, software defined networking options there. So yeah, I'll happily send you some additional information off the back of this, and then obviously take it from there. If you have any questions, please reach out to myself, of John, or any of the guys at Bytes. I'm happy to go through or give you more information.
Sure, thank you.
Fantastic. And then before I turn back over to John, I think Tim's just asked a quick question there around when CE will be updated. So Tim, we're working on that right now. I actually have the gentleman who writes CE. So because I've got a home lab myself, so I speak to him quite often. I will actually go back to him and ask him when the next version will be released. And I'll send that information to Dan. And Dan, I'm sure you can reach out then to Tim, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Guys, if there's no more technical questions, any other technical questions I could perhaps help with? I'm sure you guys are just dying to get back to that crate of beer that you have underneath the desk. Fantastic. Okay. On that high note, I'll hand back over to John. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll hand it back over to Nick to talk about beer, unless we haven't got any questions. But you can put questions in the chat while Nick's going and while you're drinking beer. Feel free.
Thanks, John. Just like before, just throw stuff in the chat, and I'm aiming to finish my bit about 20 past, 25 past. So if latterly you think of technical questions or otherwise for John or Jeff or anyone, then there'll be time to come back to that. Obviously, the data tech Nutanix, Brewtanix side is more important than the beer bit. So I will try and make this bit as interesting as possible. But I know that is the key. So there will be time at the end to revisit questions if required. We'll look out for that. Okay, so we've got about 20-25 minutes left, and we're going to have a couple of beers of the remaining 4. We won't have time to do all 5. Usually we'll do all 5 when we've pretty much got a full 2 hours. You can't just force those 5 down in quick succession. So we'll get through 3 of the 5. I'm happy to talk about the others before we go, so you know what to expect with those. But we're going to drink the Velocity, which is what we'd class as a modern craft beer, and then we're going to drink the Helles, which is a lager. So we'll do those 2 in the next 20-25 minutes. So Jeff, they're in your fridge. What do you go and get? Hopefully you've got a Velocity in your hand. If not, get a Velocity. And if you want the other one we're going to drink before the end of the call, then grab the Helles as well. So that's the same for everybody. There might be some people saying, well, what temperature should I be drinking it at? That's often a question that comes out to try and to head that off of what's going to happen in the next 20 minutes. Well, first of all, I'm going to refer to my statement from earlier on this call where I said, it's up to you. It's what's important to you, and it's what you like it. If you don't, I'll tell you what the theory says, but don't worry about what the theory says. If you like drinking your beer ice cold, drink your beer ice cold. If you like drinking it at a room temp, drink it at room temp. If you like heating it up a bit in the pan first, then that's up to you. But if you enjoy it, then do that, because this is about personal enjoyment. It's beer, and it's a thing created for pleasure and enjoyment. So do it in the way that you like. Personally, I'd start with them all in the fridge. I think for a beer for beer when it's packaged and carbonated like this, I think it starts in the fridge, and then depending on the beer, give it a more or less time out of that fridge. So it's colder than room temp for me at all times, but I might give it a bit more time out of the fridge. So for something like the Saltaire Blonde, which is quite lager style, I mean, it had been out of the fridge for 5 minutes for me. The time it took for Dan to introduce himself and get going, that's how long mine had been out of the fridge, and that's how I like to drink it. If I was drinking it in the pub and it had been hand pulled, then it's going to be at cellar temperature, which is about 10 degrees, which is a bit warmer. So there'll be some people on here thinking, well, I like my ale a little bit warmer, and that's absolutely fine and dandy. And if you've got a garage around this time of year, I reckon 10 degrees isn't far off. So that's pretty authentic. For the craft beer that we're about to drink, yes, that's a fridge cold. For the lager that comes after it, yes, that's a fridge cold. But if you start looking at some of our darker beers, the Best could be a bit warmer, the Polarity could be a bit warmer, and we have a triple choc that could be significantly warmer, and an Imperial triple choc that could be even warmer. Sometimes it's nice to like let it warm up and let it develop and enjoy it through the temperatures. You can get these big sharing bottles of beer, and what's sometimes nice to do as a bit of homework is open it up when it's cold, maybe sat in front of the fire, and have a little bit of it and drink it over a 45-minute period as it comes to temperature, and you will find out at which temperature you like it best, and that is therefore how you should enjoy your beer. So go away and do that process and see what happens. Nigel likes it nice and cool. Jeff's enjoying this, that's good, his cup of tea. Mathieu says depends on the beer. Absolutely, I would agree with that. And it depends on the setting as well. I think if you're in a pub, you want a different experience from if you're at home on a hot day versus in front of a fire on a cold day. So I think there's that's what so much about beer is, about environment and who you're with and what you're going through and what's going on. But there's a bit of theory there plus a bit of reality to give you. So first of all, we're going to talk about how to brew beer. Has anyone brewed beer here before? Give me a thumbs up in the chat or give me a hand up in the nobody that I can see is
only wine.
Only wine. Well, that's also very cool. Yeah, I remember my dad making some elderflower wine as I was growing up, and that was always interesting. But actually, I spent years in the wine industry before I came into beer, so a lot of respect for that and that process. And it's all very enjoyable. Big fan of both beer and wine. But in terms of beer, we talked about 4 key ingredients to beer, and we start with water, and we're taking Yorkshire water. We're not taking Leeds Liverpool Canal water, I promise you that. We're right next to it, but our water comes from the tap. It's Yorkshire water, but that's not how it ends up. It's not how it goes into the beer, because different types of water suit different types of beer. This is a historical thing going back thousands of years, and it makes sense when you think about geography, because there's different waters from different parts of the world have different hardnesses and acidity levels and mineral content. We know this stuff already. Certainly across the UK, we know some of these hardness, softness changes. But depending on the style of beer, there's water characteristics that suit different styles of beer. So dark beers versus pale ales versus lagers, and some of them are better at colour retention or stability or the flavours that go with that kind of beer. So over the time, and it's not so much the same now because of the technology we use, but over time, if you were in a certain place, certain beers were created. Think about Bavaria and Germany and how it's so lager-centric. And that water is so suited to that style of beer. And if you think about London and Dublin, their beer, their water is very suited to those darker beers, porters, London porters and Irish stout. That's really driven by those water styles. And then think about Burton-upon-Trent, which is kind of ground zero for pale ale making in the UK, and still the biggest breweries are based there in Burton-upon-Trent. They have water that's great for making that pale beer, which is so ubiquitous around the world. And in fact, that water style in Burton, acidity, hardness, mineral content, is now known as the best style of water for making pale beer. So we all make our water like it is in Burton. So we take Yorkshire water out of the tap and we Burtonize it. It's now a verb in the English language. We Burtonize that water. We strip out the things we don't want of our Yorkshire water. We put in the things that we do want. So it's as suited as possible for making that pale style. We'll do the same for a dark beer, and we'll do the same for a lager. So we take water and we make it suited for the right styles of beer. Let me see if there's any questions on that. Is that why Belgian Stella is nice and UK brewed under licensed beer is utterly horrible? Well, yeah, I think that could be something to do with it. Yes, but I suspect the British Stella company are treating their water so it's the same as in Belgium. I think that's part of it. I'm sure there is a little bit of geography going on there as well. I would suspect, Jeff, and I'm looking at you now, that you've drunk Belgian Stella on holiday. And most of us enjoy those experiences more when we're on holiday because they feel more authentic. You're happier, people you love, and you enjoy it more. And much of these things are about that.
Well, we used to nip over the channel as well on booze cruises, if you remember. That was a thing.
Yeah.
And bring loads of it back. So it's not just
not just that, but there is, I think, I've not tried both, and I can't speak to both. I think I think there probably is one element of it being in its original factory versus a UK version that's cheaper to put out. But I think with all alcohol and drinks, there's a big psychological element to those things, and
also I think they've changed the alcohol content because of tax laws in the UK.
Okay.
So you'll find that the alcohol content changes per country. So the US tends to have a higher one. The UK, a lot of this sounds terrible. Sounds terrible that I know so much about lager, but yeah, the UK tax laws at 5%, you've got to pay extra tax. So a lot of lagers that were 5% came down to 4.8 and 4.9 to avoid the increased tax for the stronger the beer, the more tax you pay. Apparently, you could tell me I'm wrong, Nick.
There isn't a specific cut-off at 5%. The cut-offs are at 2.8 and 7.4. But what is true is that for every percentage of alcohol, you pay more duty. So bringing it down from 5, but it's like making the bar of dairy milk smaller but charging the same, right? Yeah. They bring down the ABV, charge the same but pay less duty. So there is that. So there's a lot of things going on, and things that with alcohol. There's other things about, say, why do I get such a headache when I mix my drinks? And that's often because people are drinking more generally when they're mixing their drinks. So it's the fact they've drunk more alcohol rather than they've mixed their drinks. And the same with sulfites and things like that. Why don't I get certain hangovers on certain? It's just, there's a lot of this stuff. So not to say that Belgian Stella and UK Stella are very different, but there's probably a lot of things going on, Jeff. It's probably not just that one thing. There's probably more stuff happening. Okay. Actually, I once drank Imperial Stout from the fridge, drank it for 4 hours, and it changed taste so many times. Totally agree. What a wonderful experience. Get those 750ml bottles and drink them over time, and you really enjoy that process. And I recommend that. So, okay, so we've got this water, and we're going to put some malt in there. We're going to come back to the malt in a minute. You've got some malt now, the bags that look like powdery in your boxes. We're going to come back to those when we have the Helles. But basically, that is malted barley from the field. We've got barley, actual grown barley, and we're going to put it into a malt house, which is like a big hall which is warm and humid, and that barley is going to start to propagate its following season's starches that are going to then become the green shoots that become following year's barley. So what we're encouraging the barley to do is to develop that starch, that sugar that's going to create new growth. But before the green shoot comes out, we're going to stop that process. We're going to freeze that process. When I say freeze it, we're actually going to roast this stuff. We're going to put it in a kiln, and that stops the process of germination and just sets the starches and the sugars into this malt, and it gives it that kind of crunchy, powdery texture that you've got in front of you that we're going to come back to. So don't eat it yet, we will come back to that. But then we're going to put that in this warm water that we've created. In fact, we don't call it water at this point, we call it liquor, because it's not water from the tap anymore, it's been treated. And we're going to soak it in there. That's called the mash in. So for about 70 degrees C, a bit under that, about 68, we're going to mash that stuff in, and that's going to extract sugar and colour and flavour from that malt. And that's going to make a wort, W-O-R-T, which is basically a sweet brown malty liquid. Now, the more malt you put into that volume of liquor, the sweeter it gets, and therefore you've got more sugar to create more alcohol. So if you want to make a bigger alcohol beer, you put more malt into the same amount of water. Likewise, if you want a lighter beer, you just put less malt in there. But also you can get different colours. So you can see 2 different types of malt in front of you, but there's a whole range between those to give you browns and reds and different kinds of malty flavours. So what the brewer's doing is taking all different types of malt and blending them together to create a certain amount of sugar and a certain colour and flavour, which is going to be the base of the beer. We're going to take that liquid and put it into a copper and boil it up. And here we start adding hops. We're going to boil it for about an hour. And if we let hops sit in that 100-degree liquid for an hour, we're going to extract lots of bitterness. And sometimes we want that on something like a Saltaire Blonde or a Saltaire Best or an ale of some kind. And sometimes we don't. We want a nice, clean, fruity, juicy drink like this Velocity we're about to drink. So we'll put no hops in at 100 degrees. We'll wait till it's cooled down, and then we're going to put it in at under 80 degrees, and at that point we don't isomerize the bitterness. At that point we extract flavor and aroma, and you can keep on doing that. And when it gets very cold, like, but after fermentation, so like under 10 degrees, we can put more hops in, and that's called dry hopping. And nowadays we like to make modern beers called double dry hopping, which is basically we're finishing fermentation, then dumping loads of hop in when it's cold, and that yields no bitterness and only flavor and aroma. And that's kind of a hallmark of modern beer. And also all that hop gives it haze, because you get these hop proteins in, so you don't get a clear beer. We're going to see that in just a moment when we open this can. So all that's going on, the part of that process, and we've talked about this already, is at some point we're going to add the yeast and turn the sugar into alcohol. And for an ale, and the blonde was an ale, and this velocity is an ale, that process takes less than a week. 4 or 5 days, you've turned sugar into alcohol. So basically, you've started on day one. After 5 days, you've got an alcoholic beer. Yes, there's some processing required to get it onto the bar or into your fridge, but basically, we could have a beer in 5 days if we started that today. So what we're going to drink is Velocity, which is a hop-forward beer. It's colourful, it's striking. That's the kind of style that we're looking at these days. So you can open that up and pour it in. You open your can. Now, there are some people on here that might go, oh my God, a can. I don't drink beer out of a can. That's cheap and nasty. And, you know, 30 years ago it was, and technology has moved on and formats moved on now. Now, if you're a craft beer drinker, and someone said they had lots of craft beer, lots of cans in their garage, you're not expecting to get a traditional beer necessarily in that kind of format. And you might be disappointed if you spend money on a can that speaks of modern beer and colourful and striking and exciting, and then you get something like a blonde, which is actually quite restrained and traditional. So getting the right format for your beer is important. For the Velocity, you can see, well, it's got a slight haze on it. This is one of our less hazy beers, but can you see it's not completely clear anymore? Matt's holding it up. It's got a slight haze to it. And that's because we've dumped so much hop in here, like something like 10 times more hop than we'd put in the Saltaire Blonde. Our full tilt that we do has got 20 times more hops than it does in the Saltaire Blonde. That's to give it aroma and to give it juice and flavour, and makes it very different. So when you smell this one, you should get a different experience straight away from the Saltaire Blonde. You should be getting, or you could be getting, it depends, I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't be getting, but there's some fruits here. There's some stone fruit there for me, a little bit of sherbet. There's like a sweet fruit on the nose. And when you taste it, it's got that kind of that fruitiness, which is not overwhelming, but it's got a fruit element that the Saltaire Blonde did not have. And that's kind of what you would expect from a beer that has got this kind of format and this kind of branding. And these days, hop level can go to whole new kind of styles of beers. There's a beer called the New England IPA, which is almost opaque. I mean, it looks like thick orange juice. You really can't see through it, and there's no bitterness at all. And you could be forgiven for thinking, is this actually a beer, because it is so different in nature. So so Jeff's saying this is lovely and fruity. Yeah, I'll get Philip's off. Here's Philip, all the best. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your involvement. Hope everything goes well on your bike. Just checking, there's a few little questions in there, which is great. See if I've missed anything on the beer. No. Okay, fine. So this is a different style. Now, usually at this point, I'll be having, can we have some hands up? Who prefers which? It would be interesting. Just drop in those comments if you preferred the blonde, if you preferred the Velocity, which was the style that you liked better, because there's often a real clear divide. People be like, oh, that's not for me. That's not what beer should be like. And some people saying, oh, God, that Saltaire blonde reminded me of drinking in pubs when I was 15 years old, and I just never want to go back there. But it's all, so see, Matt's preferring the blonde, where it sounds like Jeff is preferring the can. Jeff enjoying the Great Session IPA. Well, that's good. So everyone's going to have their own feelings and thoughts and preferences, and that's great. And you can go out, and there's a whole world of craft beer these days. They've done all kinds of things. Yes, there's fruit. An actual fruit, we do them with orange and grapefruit, but we do them with chocolate, we do them with coffee, but you can go crazy. You can go peanut butter. You can get a jam donut beer from from Tiny Rebel in Wales, and Northern Monk in Leeds have even made an Aunt Bessie's roast dinner, Yorkshire pudding roast dinner beer, which is a bit crazy. There's a brewery, there's a mint chocolate beer. I'm not sure about mint and beer. There's one doing a cheese and onion crisp flavored beer. You can get all kinds these days. If you can dream it, that's what's going on, and it's available great online or in local supermarkets these days. You can really fill your boots if that's what you're interested in, but you're not going to get a hit beer every time. You know, if you've got a beer that you love, and this is why Saltaire Blonde will sell 3 million bottles, because people will fill their trolley with it, because when they finish work on a Friday, they come home, they go to their fridge and they got something they know they like. Often with those really crafty beers, you might grab one, have it, and never drink it again. All right, I've tried the cheese and onion crisp beer, I'm never going back. I've tried the Marmite beer, I'm never going back. And there's a difference there. Some of these beers are created one-off and never made again, and then the next week it's something else, and the next week it's something else. So that is a world of beer to explore if you're really interested in it. Jeff coming from a lager drinking background, so let's see what you think of the Helles when it comes around in just a moment. Mathieu saw a wedding cake imperial stout. Was that sweet? Was it kind of cakey? I guess that's what's going on there. It's got fruits and nuts flavors in there. John's had the triple chocolate before. Great for slow cooker beef stew. Yeah, absolutely. Agree with that, John. Chili is also a good thing to put the triple choc in, and we've got one of our employees makes a wicked chocolate ice cream using the triple choc beer. So definitely go for that. It's also a good beer to pair up with things like that, especially the imperial triple choc, because it's got that bit of weight to it at 7.4%. You can put it in a small wine glass and serve it with something like a really spicy chili, or like a dessert, like a really dark chocolate torte, and that can be a nice thing to do. That's another bit of exploration, food and matching. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left, and I'm going to magically make that velocity disappear because I want to talk about the Helles next. This is about lager, and this is an explanation that I promised, and this really talks through three of the styles. We've kind of started with traditional British ale with the blonde, and then we've moved to the modern kind of craft hoppy beer. And by the way, this is the point before you start drinking the lager, is to get those hops out and give them a little bit of a rub, or crush the bag and then smell it, and you can get some of those, establish some of those flavors. Hops, I mean, very much like grapes. If you're into wine, and if wine's been mentioned a few times, you think about the old world, Europe, restrained. We talked about earthy, spicy. You can get floral, these kinds of herbal notes out of generally European restrained hops. But you go to the west coast of America, Australia, New Zealand, you get big, punchy, powerful flavors, very much like grapes and the wines we get out of those countries, very much like hops and the flavors we get out of those. It's all about terroir and climate and fertility of soil and agricultural practices, but we get these commonalities between the two different products, which means that we can then make a restrained blonde or a punchy, powerful velocity. And that's another joy of exploring different kinds of beers from different kinds of places. So hopefully you can get that in the hops. Let's talk about Helles, and let's talk about lager, because this is the third style, and this is really quite different in production method to the other two, and I'll explain why. And this is where someone asked me to define lager. Well, if we think about beer as an overall word of definition for what we're drinking here, within the family, within the definition of beer, there are two families. One is lager and one is ale. Now, in this country, we are really comfortable with the ale family. It's the kind of beer that has been drunk in the UK for generations. And so when I talk of IPA and pale ale and stout and porter and mild and all those different styles that you see on the hand-pull pubs in the UK, that is all the family of ale. And what defines ale is the yeast that we use to ferment the sugar into alcohol. And that is a top fermenting yeast. It sits on top, a big fluffy yellow thing, and it turns the sugar into the alcohol from the top at quite a high temperature, about 20 degrees, quite quickly, in about 4 or 5 days. That is the process of making an ale that defines all that world of ale. But there's a whole other family that's just as big, which is called the lager family. And in this country, historically, we've not really explored anything but the coldest, fizziest thing that we just called lager. We started to get a bit better of understanding what a Pilsner is and what a Helles is, but it's so deep. You can get Schwarz lagers and Dunkel lagers and Box and Doppelbox and Weissen and Weisse, and there's all different types that if you were living in the continent, you would be much more comfortable with that world than you were the ale world. And the thing about lager is the yeast. It's a bottom fermenting yeast. It sits at the bottom of the liquid and turns the sugar into alcohol from the bottom. And it does it at a very cold temperature at like 2 to 4 degrees C, and it takes a long time. It takes like 6 weeks if you do it properly. Now, because it takes so long at a cold temperature, we don't get any additional flavors added to that flavor product, whereas you do in ale. Fermenting at 20 degrees, you're going to get all kinds of additional flavors, or esters as they're known, which gives things like British bitter its fruitiness and its complexity that we love. But in lager, you want a clean product. So we ferment it very low temp, very little side effect of flavor, and you get a really clean product. And that's what you're expecting when you drink any kind of lager, from Carling to Helles to whatever, to Stella, whatever it is, a real clean base. And that's what we get. Now, the word lager, I don't know if there's any German speakers on here, but it means to warehouse, to store. It is a warehouse in Germany. So that's where the name came from, because it would be warehoused beer, because it took so long to make. The ale would be ready within the week, but you had to warehouse the lager before it was ready. And that's where the name lager comes from. It just means, it means to store, to warehouse in Germany. So that's a bit of the history. And, you know, the ground zero for this stuff is what's now Czech Republic and the town of Pilsen for Pilsner, and then also around Bavaria, around Munich, and the Helles style, which is so comfortable in Germany. Helles means bright or clear in German, so it basically means pale. What we're drinking here is pale, and that's what we've got. We brew this as authentically as possible. We stole a guy from Brewdog. If you've heard of Brewdog, and many of you will, we stole their beer development consultant. He was wanting to move south, and we just nicked him at the right time, and he had loads of experience brewing lager in Germany for Brewdog and learning for them, so he could brew their lagers, and then brought that to us. So we're using Weihenstephaner yeast, which is bottom fermenting traditional authentic yeast from the Weihenstephaner brewery in Munich, and we're using all German ingredients, Huelmelon hops and Saphir hops, to give us a kind of citrus delicate flavor on this. Now, because it's proper Weihenstephaner Bavarian yeast, it's got a bit more funk on than you would expect from a Carling, so you do get a bit of a nose on there that you would that more than you would potentially expect that if you're drinking something like Carling, and even more than something like Stella, because it's got more depth of flavor to it from that perspective. But what we should be getting is delicate citrus, delicate spice, something like potentially coriander or something like that. Not so much coriander. What am I thinking of? Cinnamon is what has been picked up on this by some of the beer tasters, but certainly citrus, cinnamon, and then there's that little yeasty funk on there. But it's got that real clean flavor and that low bitterness, and that low bitterness is important, and it's balanced by a sweetness. People don't really appreciate how sweet lager is, even when you're drinking something like Carling or Stella. Just revisit when you drink it how sweet it is, especially on the early part of the palate. That's one of the reasons why it's so approachable, because it has a sweetness. It finishes with a bitterness to balance it out, but it is not as strong a bitterness as the blonde or some of the beers in your pack. If you take the paler of the two dusty malty things and eat it right now, and believe me you can, and believe me it's pleasant, you can start tasting the malt that's going into this product. So I can't see anybody doing it. Dan, John, Jeff, I'm looking at you three. Grab your pale. That's it. No, is that the green hops one? Not the green hops one, Dan, the pale one. That's the one. Yeah, grab that and eat a bit of that. That is the malt that we were talking about that has been kiln dried, and the starch has been frozen. It's sweet, it's malty, Horlicks, Malteser, that kind of thing. It's pleasant. And that's what we're using to make this beer. So hopefully you can taste it. See, Jeff, it's not a trick. Jeff is not a plant from me. Jeff is enjoying that. So that's good. So do enjoy it. I mean, it's not going to do you for dinner tonight, but it will. It's a nice thing to try. When you drink the polarity later on, then try the dark one. That is the same thing. That is the same malt. It's just been roasted for longer, and it's had the sugar has kind of burnt out of it, so it adds no sweetness, but it adds coffee and chocolate and licorice and that kind of thing. If you like black coffee, you're going to love it. If you don't, you might find it a challenge. But when we make something like a really dark beer like Polarity, or even something like Guinness when it's being made, that's 90% pale malt and 10% dark malt. That's all you need, just to give it the colour and flavour required to make it a dark beer. So you've got those things in front of you and you can taste them and see the kind of things. You've probably got enough to make a couple of pints of beer if you've got if you've got the right equipment and right know-how, and I've explained it all to you. So hopefully that works. So that's there. Give some feedback would be good. Very sweet but really nice. Match. Yeah. Okay. You're. I don't know. Where's the origins of your name? Mathieu Gallant. And I'm saying is, are you waiting for the reply to come up? We'll see that. Okay, fine. So in that kind of area, there's some fantastic beer being created in that part of the world. And one of our brewers has just gone out and set up a brewery out there. If you ever come across a Marek Thrills, the Thrills Brewery in Poland, Maciej, he's our ex-brewer, really good lad, and lots of coming out of there. Jeff, wow, so different, really clean tasting. That's the thing. Get some real authentic Czech lager or some authentic Bavarian lager. It is nothing like the lager we drink from here. It has got character, it's got flavour. They're all unique and they're all wonderful. And you can there's some the House of the Trembling Madness in York. They do home delivery, and I know that they've got just tons of different lager styles. You can fill a box with just individuals, and they'll send you 12 different niche Czech, Polish, German lagers, and they're just a joy to drink through with friends. Cousin's a professional beer taster. You must know him. I mean, Thrills, like that. Marek is his name. Marek. So have a look out for them. They've just done Thrills. Have literally just done a collab with Budvar, which I thought just blew my mind. I mean, I love Budvar as a beer, and for them doing it, for them doing that. So that was great. Okay, so we had a bit of a side out there with Maciej, which is great. I was wondering if it was a stitch up. Love Budvar too. Yeah, they're great, and just a great product delivered in those handled steins. Is just fantastic. We've just ordered in a load of glass printed handled steins for our lagers, and I just can't wait to drink my own beer out of my own stein. It's going to be fantastic. But look, we're back just over 5:30, so I know there's a couple of tech questions that come up in the chat while we've been doing this. So I'm gonna finish my bit here and say that's as much as I'm going to say now. So I would say if there are no further questions, and I'm happy to answer them, I want to say thank you for having me. You have been a really engaging audience. It's always great when people are talking and getting involved, and it's been great to be part of the event today. So for the organisers, thank you, and to the people who have been doing the feedback and getting involved. I do really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the beer. If you haven't had your beer yet, and I think Maciej, who's been so involved, I think I saw your name on where that hasn't had the beer yet. So hopefully you will get it and enjoy it just as much. So just all to say thank you for having me.
Thank you for that, Nick. Everyone should have also had a poll just pop up on their screen. So if you could complete that, it would be fantastic. But thank you all for taking time out of your day to come to the event. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much, Nick, for taking us through all of that. It's fantastic. And thank you, John, for the content that yourself and Jeff ran through. It was brilliant. There were a couple of tech questions, so I will send the answers out to those who've had those through already. But if there's any other questions, please feel free to either email us across at tellmemore@bytes.co.uk or through to my email, which is in the chat as well. So again, if there are any questions, please let us know. If not, please enjoy the rest of your Thursday. The team may call out just to get some feedback, or if there's anything else we want to run through with you. But again, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.